Hello everyone, my name's Carla Treloar. I'm the Director of the Centre for Social Research in Health and the Social Policy Research Centre. Not long now till we get to the main prize of the day, but I hope my comments of introduction for Liesl will give you some light and shade into the variety of paths that she's trodden. I'd also like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people on whose land we meet and extend that respect to elders past and present and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues and friends present with us today. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my dear friend Liesl Tesch, AM MP, as plenary speaker for this forum on inequality today. I've been a fan of Liesl's for an extraordinary long time. We met in Year 7 at Toronto High School. And there are a lot of firsts for me with Liesl, many of which cannot be spoken about in public, but she was the first person I knew to be living with a disability. And the accident that caused her spinal injury occurred at the end of our second year of university studies. And before that, she was playing basketball at state level, doing backflips behind the school gym and performing really bad rap dancing at school talent quests. But that accident set the course for a new life. She finished injury, hospital, rehab. She finished her university degree as a super grad in education and began teaching geography in high schools in Western Sydney. She picked up life as a wheelchair basketball player and was selected for the Australian team for the Australian Paralympics, the first of 7 games chasing those gold medals. Such was her talent, she was invited as the first woman ever to play in the European Men's Professional Wheelchair Basketball League. But during that time, Liesl's vision grew and grew. To promote social inclusion and social justice for people with disabilities, it went global. So in that time, in her own trips, she went to, are you ready? Bosnia, Easter Island, East Timor, Jamaica, Brazil, Peru, Kenya, South Africa, Laos. Each time focused on finding people with disabilities and demonstrating what change could be achieved for the individual and the community through the inclusion and involvement of everyone in sport. She formalised that vision with the foundation of a not-for-profit organisation, Sport Matters, and that group has the goal of a world where everyone is active, healthy, included, empowered and free from poverty. So, time passes and Liesl had to retire from wheelchair basketball, but again, such is her talent, she was spotted for a second sporting career. Whilst being part of a documentary for sailors with disabilities, getting ready for their annual yacht race to Sydney to Hobart, she was spotted by another elite Paralympic athlete, Dan Fitzgibbon. He asked her to partner with him and together they conquered all before them and brought home those gold medals back to back in London and in Rio. After Rio, sailing wasn't reinstated as a Paralympic sport, so she really had to retire then. But again, the inexhaustible energy, focus and talent had to be directed laser beam somewhere else. So this year, Liesl set her sights on being elected to New South Wales Parliament as the member for the seat of Gosford and of course succeeded. So she now has a new platform from which to promote the rights of people with disability and to tackle inequality in all areas of our societies. What happens next? Can't wait to see. Liesl, it's such a pleasure to welcome you so warmly to UNSW.
What a thrill and what an honour. Thank you so much, Carla, and thank you and congratulations to the PLuS Alliance and the University of New South Wales for hosting us all here today. What do I talk about? I really am going to talk about just my personal perspective, and it has turned into a professional, a political journey, but my story that Carla's already given you an insight to really is a story of what is possible, I believe, and I think we've all got goals and we've all got challenges on the way, and I just encourage you to really focus on those goals and work towards making them happen. Maybe those goals are bigger than what you know, and those goals that are bigger than what you know are also possible. So I'm just going to share my personal story, which started I was born in Brisbane and my family moved to New Zealand when I was 3 months old. We grew up in a caravan that Dad designed on the beach. We had 5 cats, 3 goats, a rabbit and a pig. We ate lots of bush tucker, we call it these days, and we even ate roadkill. We weren't very wealthy at all, but we had an idyllic, beautiful childhood. And returned to Australia with a sister in tow. Luckily, I didn't pick up that New Zealand passport. Despite my mother being a Kiwi and my sister as well. And we settled on the shores of Lake Macquarie. And I must say, Professor Carla Trelaw, and I grew up and went to school together in a place called Toronto, where expectations for HSC and beyond weren't absolutely awesome. I think there we were taught to challenge expectations. And I remember very clearly a sticker, which would have had a hashtag on the front of it these days. It was on the front of my biology teacher's desk. She was the mistress in charge of girls those days, and it said girls can do anything. And I pop that in my pocket and I take it with me more and more now that I'm in this role. As a kid, I was the kid who played every sport, maybe to get out of class, maybe because I loved to play. We sailed every afternoon on the shores of Lake Macquarie, and showing my age, we had to be home in time for the 6 p.m. ABC News. Things have changed since then. 2 days after my last exam in second year, I was riding my bicycle home from a friend's place, the bicycle that I rode every day. I swerved over the wrong side of the road, my bike hit the gutter, I somersaulted over the handlebars and fell about 2 metres and landed on concrete. I was found by an old lady moaning in her driveway. Her daughter lived over the road, and the daughter came and said to me, "Is there any tingling in your hands or feet?" And you know when you hit your funny bone and you get that sensation? She identified straight away spinal cord injury because I had that sensation all through my legs. I was taken to Newcastle Hospital, choppered to Sydney, went in for a big operation, and woke up about 2 weeks later off the painkillers to say, at 19 years old, I was to be told I was never going to walk again. I lay in bed for the 8 weeks, and every day they used to come and stick needles into my legs, and I'd just watch as it was sticking into that couch. And after about 6 weeks, I said, "Can you do that again? I think I felt it." So I was really lucky because I wasn't moved around. The swelling and the bruising on my spinal cord initially stopped any feeling and movement getting through to my legs. But as that swelling went down, I started to regain initially feeling in my legs, but I'm now a very incomplete paraplegic. So I walk, but not perfectly. I wear glamorous ankle-foot orthotics, daggy shoes, but hey, the kids sometimes think they're funky. And my feet go from there to there. Maybe at the back you can't see my quality toe movement, but it's there. And as I said, I walk but not perfectly. I weight bear. I walk short distances. I wheel long distance. So if the park's available for me and I just have to rock in and rock out of the shops, I can do it without my chair. But if I need to go long distance, I take my chair and I travel around the world with a backpack, because I do. So also part of my rehab, my injury was 27th November 1988, and no one ever forgets that day. Their life changed forever. But in 1988, no one really knew what people with disabilities were. We weren't out and about in the same way that we are now. And one of the physios said to me, "Liesl, would you like to try wheelchair basketball?" Oh, yeah? So we went in the special van from Prince Henry Hospital out to Mount Druitt, where you get killed with knives and stones. We ended up teaching for the next 5 years. And I remember clear as day wheeling into this stadium that was filled with people in fluoro wheelchairs going fast and having fun, and they had jobs and cars and lives and boyfriends. To me, wow, there is possibility and disability in the same space. This is fantastic. And as Carla mentioned, with my basketball background, the New South Wales girls were really excited. There was a girl who could already play, and it wasn't long before I was asked to try out for the Australian women's team. I remember going down to Canberra and I wheeled onto the court and actually burst into tears because the girls on the next court were girls that I'd played with, able-bodied, and they were so beautiful and so graceful, and I was in this chunk of metal, but who would know the journey that would take me on, and this chunk of metal's got wings and I've had an amazing time. I think also, just stepping back, I was a uni student. They said to me, "Liesl, you're going to become a pensioner?" I'm like, "What does that mean? You get paid to go to uni?" I'm like, "Bring it on," compared to cleaning my mum's friends' houses. So the Commonwealth Rehabilitation Scheme assisted me to continue my university career, which I think possibly was going to be hanging off the front of the Rainbow Warrior, but the wheelchair was going to make that a bit tricky, which then morphed into the arts degree, morphed into a science degree, and came out with a diploma in education. And teaching's been a fantastic job. And first year out, I was in Barcelona. I put my card into the wall and my full pay came out with 4 weeks leave every year to represent Australia as in public education. It's been a fantastic career. But I think more than anything else, whilst I've taught geography, business studies, Aboriginal studies and a few other bits and bobs along the way, I think when social media arrived in London 2012 beside us, I actually think that I've taught those kids that people with disabilities can do whatever they want. And I know the kids that I've taught, and I'm emotional about it, the kids that I taught have seen that it's possible, regardless of this, that anything is life is possible. So it's a pretty big privilege. Sydney 2000, well, we started in Barcelona, we came 7th out of 8. We got better, we came 4th. And when Sydney 2000 was announced, we as Paralympians worked with the Sydney 2000 Paralympic Organising Committee to convince Sydney, to convince Australia, to convince New South Wales to come to these games. So for the first time ever in international history, people came and watched people with disabilities play sport. It was absolutely fantastic. And wheeling out in front of the home crowd in that packed stadium is still one of the best sporting memories in my life. And that was also the first medal, which was the silver. I'll pass these around, I suppose. Just come and have a look at them at the end. The silver from Sydney 2000. And in the party afterwards, Carla would have been there in her wild Toronto lot amongst the riffraff that had the party tents shut down because there was too much wheelchair stacks on, challenging the boundaries. She was working in London. And we had to write a letter of apology. But in amongst that chaos, one of the Italian men said to me, Liesl, would you like to come and play basketball in Italy? And I gave this guy my number. Like, first of all, I said, no, I'm a girl. And then I gave this guy my number and thought nothing of it. And 2 weeks later, I'm back teaching on the Central Coast at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ciao, Bella, come to Italy next week. And when we started wheelchair basketball, we didn't have a women's league. We had some small women's championships, but we as women sat with our able-bodied friends and actually set up a National Women's Wheelchair Basketball League, which I played in last weekend, which is now 25 years old, and with our able-bodied friends. So I think it's about thinking differently and how we create some of these solutions. Our able-bodied friends sit beside us in this bit of, this is not my basketball chair, this is my day chair. I've got a basketball chair. Able-bodied friends jump into basketball chairs. In Paralympic sport, we've got a points classification system, so someone with a high-level injury who can't get up when they leave forward's worth 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5 points, and altogether the 5 players on the court can only add up to 14 points. So our able-bodied friends are also 4.5 points. They play against me as a 4-pointer. I have to be stronger. And the league is so much stronger, and we've got people with all sorts of skills and also legs that work to help move the chairs in and out of the trucks. Pretty handy. But that's in existence in Australia. But in the meantime, we always played in the men's league. So initially I thought no, but a year later I wrote my basketball resume with freetranslation.com and sent it to the teams. I decided I want to go and live in Spain, sent it to the teams in Spain that I thought would be great places to live. And 4 teams got back to me, and the team with the best English won the girls. So I applied for my year's leave without pay from the Department of Education, packed up my house into the garage, and off I set to Spain after 10 weeks of lessons on basic introductory Spanish. And my team was fantastic, and the Spanish men had never seen women playing wheelchair basketball. Women didn't play wheelchair basketball in Spain. And flying down the court on the first one, the rules are pretty much the same. If you crash into someone's chair, it's a charge. If you hold someone's chair, it's a holding foul. This guy held my chair, and I got a free throw, and he was cross. 10 minutes later, he did the same thing. He was even crosser. The third time he did it to me, he was so cross, he swore at me so badly in Spanish that he got kicked out. Like, I had no clue what he said. And that was the start. The following weekend, like now, I'm living the dream. It's my job to play wheelchair basketball. I get flown to Melilla, which is a Spanish colony on the north coast of Africa, to play what I love. Put my hand up for the jump ball. The guy beside me reaches across and goes, split second, I'm here as a professional athlete. I had the game of my life. He came to shake my hand at the end. I'm like, get out of here. And then I had translated to my boys what happened, and we gave him quite a hard time. But after that, the boys knew I was there. I played a season in Spain. I thought it'd be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I moved to Sardinia in the middle of the Mediterranean for 3 seasons, and I had a running joke after we won a silver in Athens with a guy from Paris, just encouraging the development of women's inclusion in sport across Europe in wheelchair basketball. I said, when you've got an all-women's team playing in your second division men's comp, I'll move to Paris. So I moved to Paris, as you do. And then after the season in Paris, I got a letter from the Department of Education saying you've got a job at Woy Woy. So I moved to Paris to Woy Woy, as you do, and the learning curve had flattened out. And then comes an email from Sailors with Disabilities saying, would you like to try out for a spot on the Sydney to Hobart? And I think it's about taking risks. At the start of me, said no to moving to Europe. At the start, said no, that's far too dangerous, people get killed. A bit of good marketing, would you like to go for a twilight sail on a 54-foot yacht on Sydney Harbour? Bring it on. So off I went down, and I wheeled down the wharf, and it felt like I was coming home. I'd been, as a result of my injury, no regrets being in basketball stadiums around the world, but I grew up on the shores of Lake Macquarie, and wheeling down that wharf just felt right. And I didn't realise that I'd been away from a life I loved. And I got to the wharf where the boat was, and there's a camera saying, how does it feel to be trying out? I'm like, I am so not. And we went out through the heads and came back in and said, what do I have to do? And I spent the next 3 months, pushing people with disabilities off the boat to get the gig. No, training really hard to learn everything I had to do. And I think sailing to Hobart with this amazing team of people with and without disabilities, I fell in love with one of the able-bodied volunteers, and we live happily ever after now, was a lesson in what's possible. The 2 guys who were above-knee amputees were perfect on the foredeck of the boat. So anyone in this room would get knocked off by those waves. They had no legs to get knocked off. Bill, who has 4 elbows and 7 3/4 fingers, was a fantastic navigator. Our skipper was completely blind. At night, he was by far the best sailor. And it's really about thinking creatively about what we can do in the world to create solutions rather than think that it's obstacles. And I think Sailors' Disabilities was perfect. And then, as Carla said, the documentary of that, Dan Fitzgibbon, put this one out there, quadriplegic, accident off a wharf, incomplete quad, so he's got some movement in his hands, rang me to see if you want to go for a sail. I read the book on how to trim the jib, and I got down to the wharf and went to shake Stan's hand and think I'm trimming more than the jib. And then I looked at the boat, it's got that big Australian flag out the front, the spinnaker. We lift Dan onto the boat, strap his 2 hands to 2 carbon fibre steering poles. He sits in a carbon fibre designed seat with like racing car straps across him, and it's got a tube connected to a battery. So as the boat goes through a tack, goes from one side to the other, Dan then sucks in this tube and his seat cants from side to side. We went for a sail, got back to the wharf. He said, "Do you want to come to Miami next week?" And I said, yes. And we won our first 3 regattas and a gold in London and backed it up with the gold in Rio. So it's been a pretty amazing journey of what is possible. But I think Carla shed some light onto me. My job as the geography teacher is to do the travelling and see what inequality, like I know inequality and we fight and fight and fight for here, but for me inequality in other nations is a lot different to what it is here. And for me, what I'd seen in Australia, the power of sport changes people's lives so much. And in East Timor, we went over to deliver a wheelchair basketball clinic. We took 10 wheelchairs sponsored by this motivation company delivering low-cost chairs around the world, 2 basketball rings. And we got there and I'm like, "Where's the basketball court?" And they said, "Over there." I'm like, "No, that's a bit of concrete and a lot of mud and broken glass, a taxi and a buffalo." And then I went back to the hotel. Liesl, my job description is actually drawing the basketball court. So we moved all that stuff off the basketball court. I was too scared to do it in spray paint to start with. Did it in chalk and then we sprayed over it, like sweating like a pig in the East Timorese sun before we even started, teaching people what wheelchair basketball even was. After a week, the people with disabilities were asked, "What do you want to do?" And they said, "We want to go and put on a display of this in the township." So we put all the wheelchairs into a truck and all the people crammed into one little minivan, and we got down to the marketplace. It was just dirt, but they'd seen model drawing up a basketball court. Jackie, my girlfriend, and I sat back and we watched the city stall, the town, I suppose, Dili's a town, stop 3 deep, 4 deep on their motorbikes and watch people with disabilities perform, play sport in front of everybody, and possibly a positive performance for some of those people for their first times in their lives. Another time in South Africa, one of the politician that came to introduce and open up the basketball tournament that we'd established actually stood on the stage and said, "We've got a different form of apartheid that I didn't realise existed." And now 2 members of that group are actually working to create sporting opportunities for people with disabilities in the community of Cape Town. So Jackie and I came home and we've been doing a few projects, like there's lots of projects around the world, but doing a few projects together. And the name Sport Matters was created in the shower. We drove to Canberra thinking that we were about sport with people with disabilities for our market research. We drove back going, holy moly, we actually just became sport. So now we're working with Rugby League about social inclusion. Now we're working in Pakistan using a woman who's played squash her whole life as a man, who's an incredibly talented squash player, to encourage women to participate not just in sport but in society. After the earthquake in Nepal, we're using badminton for social inclusion, nation building and peace building. So Sport Matters is now 7 years old, and Jackie, who's my bestie, we set it up together, is in Russia this week talking to, I just have to tell you the right name for this one, the 6th International Conference of Ministers and Senior Officials responsible for physical education and sport, speaking on a panel about developing a comprehensive vision of inclusive access for all and maximising the contribution of sport to sustainable development goals, working on some modelling we're doing across the Pacific. This conference plans to shift the world from declarations of policy intent towards measurable action to which international government ministers commit. Now, I must say, it's one thing to put on the green and gold and represent your country. But it's another thing to put up your hand and be represented as a member of parliament to represent your community. What an incredible privilege, what an incredible challenge. And what an honour. It's a pretty big honour to be elected at a by-election. So this journey for me is only 3 months old. I was elected in a by-election for the seat of Gosford, so I've got 2 years in opposition to learn as much as I possibly can in my role as a politician. So every single day I'm asking a million questions, I'm pushing and I'm poking, I'm asking people on the other side of the room, I'm challenging. I don't know how I'm meant to do this. This is amazing. And I'm so excited to be in this room, working with people who are guiding politicians in this country in the leading thinking of what is the future. We are elected representatives, but there's a lot of people behind the scene that is the base of the knowledge that we rely on to make our decisions. Every day, I'm learning, probably every day. Remember that day where you learnt more than any other day in your whole life, the steepest learning curve? Every day is that day for me. Like, it's quite an amazing, what a privilege and what a journey that I'm on. I go to Parliament and I expect access. And I'm fighting for access in Parliament. I want to start in Parliament House beside my 2 other colleagues who were elected in the by-election. Instead, I'm fighting for access. That's such rubbish. I don't want to be having that conversation in this nation, but it's real. So I think we have to continue. Like, it's hard because do we want to make it a fight? We need to make it a journey. It's a privilege to be in a team of leaders who look closely at the problems today and be part of the Labor team who look perhaps through different lenses. I'm here as part of, or am I here as part of the affirmative action policy? Labor's going to have at least 50% of our leaders as women by 2025. Is that too late? Should we be doing something before then? Labor commits to working to address the qualities of inequality at local, state, national and international level, possibly in a different way to what they're being addressed by the Liberal government today. And I think I spoke to the Vice-Chancellor. Social entrepreneur, I think that might be what I call myself as well now because I've spoken to... It's interesting. It's about looking at where the gaps are and pulling the people together to fill those gaps. Like, what an incredible challenge, especially when you're on opposition with no budget. But it's such a privilege, and I really am. I've got 2 years to really identify what's there in the community and pull the players together to see if we can, and we can deliver. I know we can. Meeting those people... One of those incredible groups I've had the privilege to meet is Coast Shelter. It's 25 years old now. Maybe part of that thinking needs to be updated, who feed 250 homeless people in our community every single day. It's amazing, primarily based on volunteers and some government grants. But for me, at the moment, the problem of housing affordability is in my backyard. It's real. The local constituent who took me on a tour of all the dunny lanes of Woy Woy and Yamina 2 mornings ago is cross that the people are living in granny flats. They are chockers. Yesterday I met with the Fire and Emergency Services who can get to those people in granny flats who are living there. The people of Point Clare are up in arms about 5 single women and 5 people in affordable aged care moving into a 55-unit development in our community. Like, it just doesn't sit right. It's horrible. Out the back of my building, it's like the people called it a boarding house. They can't imagine where they're going to get all those criminal and drug dealers from. 30 wonderful people on low incomes have moved into affordable accommodation out the back of my building. So I actually spoke to your Vice-Chancellor. I spoke to the University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor. I've spoken to our local media about really educating people that poverty and disadvantage is right there beside it. Poverty and disadvantage is right there. It's in my home. And I think that's something we as leaders need to whilst we're working to change things, we need to let people feel comfortable that it's right there beside it and it's real and it is in our backyard, because we can't be fighting to try and make this place more exclusive. And I think that's what the Vice-Chancellor referred to. Whew. As an educator, here in a room of educators, we know that education is perhaps the key factor that's going to bridge this education gap. Yet I'm talking in a nation where our federal government has just cut the Gonski equity funding. I spoke at Newcastle University graduation at Arimba campus, yay for regional universities, where 1/3 of the people in the room cringed when I talked about the enabling funding going. I could tell the people who had entered the university with that additional support from the federal government, for those people who possibly weren't going to be university students, being pulled away. Like, how can we make those decisions in an educated nation? Another example, I think at government at all levels, we need to be really careful at looking at what's working and letting it stay. Yesterday I met with people from a Central Coast Advice who have been working inside the police station because after 7 years of success, that funding's being pulled and that's being operated, that's going to be pushed to somewhere, to an outside NGO. And so with this Central Coast Advice team then as a Member of Parliament, I have to try and fight this decision. It's a really tough decision about fighting for things that we know that works. And I think as leaders we need to be the change. Let's walk beside our brothers and sisters and let's listen with our hearts. Audrey Hennessy is a young Waka Waka and yoga woman who moved in with my partner Mark and I when her foster home situation changed and she no longer fitted in. One day I really hope to support Audrey to buy her first home. I don't know what shape that's going to look like, but I really hope that can be part of the journey. I'd like to acknowledge all our young Aboriginal people in the room with us today because you really are, power to you, you are the leaders of the future, the community leaders of the future. I'd like to acknowledge and give gratitude and respect to the Bidjigal people and thank them for the beautiful custodianship on the land with which we meet today. And shout out to all the Aboriginal people here. We are the future, walking and wheeling together. Audrey's Year 12 major work hangs in my office at Parliament. The magnificent colours and textures of the bush tucker that was her childhood, depicting her home life growing up in Bayugal on the north coast of New South Wales. In the middle of the painting are 9 white dwellings and the asbestos mine. James Hardy knew the consequences. The New South Wales government knew the consequences, but the mine was kept open due to the excess of high levels of Aboriginal employment in that community. This painting reminds me every day of the importance of the integrity of government decisions and that we must not compromise profit and KPIs at the expense of wellbeing of Australia's workers and communities. 3 months ago, I was a high school teacher encouraging kids to imagine the world with a job that we don't even know what it is. Today, I'm sitting as a Polly, empowering and thanking you, the leaders in thought in this nation, imagining a world that can possibly be, imagining a place where these jobs that we don't even know what they are real, thinking about the grand challenges and the speed of change and the ethics around the change that is coming. And I thank you and continue to thank you for the work that you do in this area. Just before I close, I'd like to share a story about London. My mum was really sick leading up to the Games with cancer. We had a family discussion about whether we go or whether we don't go. I'd booked a flight after the last race and was going to come home after the last race. After our first day of sailing, I'd done the ice bath and I was in my bed trying to recover my body temperature with the hot water bottle, and my sister called and said, "Sissy, Mum's passed away." And bawling my eyes out, I sat on the step and Dan came back from the food hall and said, "Teshi, I know that the Games are over." I said, "Fitzy, more than anything else in the whole wide world, Mum would want us to continue. Our mothers, the people who guide us in our journey, are so important and believe in us so much." So that gold medal, when they put that gold medal around my neck, it was something that I'd chased for 24 years of my life. That crazy round piece of metal. Seriously, why would you bother? But that piece of metal going around my neck gave me a happiness that I carry in my heart every single day of my life. So I know your goals are high, and I encourage all of you to continue to work to change the world, because together we will make a difference. Thank you ever so much for having me here today.